what you did do that day also, what hit home for a lot of people, and I hope we've got enough time, we don't need to run off anywhere just yet, and we can just go into, you know, one of the big impacts of that weekend was the sharing that you had, and I know we had spoken about it. So let me just go back a bit into how we connected. So I have a background in working with young people, as you know. I work with what they call the hard to reach, which is pretty much people of color that come from low income, low educational, low everything, all the low stuff that they talk about when they do their charts and graphs. You know, that's where I come from, and that's where the people who I work with primarily come from. So they have all these labels and titles. I personally don't own or I don't embrace them, but they call us the hard to reach, this, that, and the other. So-called bad kids. That's who I end up working with. Not who I ended up working with, who I chose to work with, because I saw how they were marginalized. I saw how they weren't given the same access as, you know, all the rest of people who have access to education. And when you don't have that, what's going on here? Looks like my battery's about to die.
Oh. Plug it in.
Plug it in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And my journey and work with these young people have led me to realize, you know, again, just kind of part and parcel of what you were sharing earlier on, you know, it's like we're in a position, in a situation where I've come to realize that these so-called bad young people, they're not bad young people. In fact, I was one of these young people. When I work with these young people, I can see myself, I can reflect, I can see where they may be going wrong, you know, and stray or going on the wrong path. But I always used to question, and I still ask people to ask themselves, or even ask the young people themselves, how did you get into this position? How did you get into this place where you think you need to do these things to get yourself where you need to get to? And a lot of times we don't want to get to the root. We just look at the surface and see a young person who looks a certain way, dressed a certain way, is acting a certain way, and think that's them, that's who they are. And I always used to have to remind my colleagues and peers who I was around in the council meetings and this, that, and the other, that, you know, these young people, in particular these young black males, they don't just wake up in the morning and want to be killers and drug dealers and all the rest of it, you know, because that's what they call the hard to reach and the bad kids. They're this, they're that, all the rest of it. And I'm like, you know, they were, you know, they've gone through a process. In fact, they've been experimented on. They're a byproduct of over 400 to 500 years of experimenting and being moved around and displaced and prodded and nudged and this, that, and the other. And this is what you see at the end of all of that. And in fact, we're not at the end of it. We're still going through the motions, and it's not been addressed or dealt with and all the rest of it. And that led me and you to connecting somewhere, you know, on our journey, just in the regards to young people. You've got a young son, and just the resources or the lack of resources out there available to support young people in the various rites or passages that would allow them to become from young boys to men. And even back in the days, we may not have had culturally appropriate models in place, but at minimum, we did have a youth club. And at I'm being honest, at the youth club, we had some elders who really looked out for us. They wanted the best for us. Like, they got it. They kind of got it. And that's what I do acknowledge now, because I am currently in schools and work with adults who work with young people. And most of these adults can't stand the young people they work with, especially the teachers and stuff like that. If you hear conversations in the staff rooms and all the rest of it, you know, they're not in the best place, man, these young people, the people who care for them and all the rest of it. So what am I saying? They're going to look for options. They're going to look for ways out. They're going to look for, look, this model that you've given us doesn't work for us. We've identified that it doesn't work for us. It didn't work for my parents. Our parents are struggling. They're broke. They're just about making enough money for us to survive. I've got to start thinking about ways of bringing an income in. Should I use the same path that the system has set up that hasn't worked for my parents? Or should I look at some other options that give me quick money, that give me a quick, you know, a quick fix? Because that's what they're basically telling me anyway, like, get out, get a job, make some money, you know, end your career and go live in the Bahamas and stuff like that. So should I wait a whole lifetime in trying to achieve that? Or should I try and fast track my way into that? And there's a lot of young people, they're smart and wise as to why they shouldn't do the long-winded version of it, you know? Exactly. But yes, the choices they make may not be the best choices in the here and now based upon the system that we're under and the repercussions of the choices that they make. So with that said, you brought up at the baking convention about how your son had been impacted by the county lines and lifestyle and culture. And I do know that some people may not be privy to exactly what that is. So I'd like you to share just a little bit or as much as you can about your story with your son. And I want to get right through to the point of any solutions that you were able to discover, because there's many parents out there that are going through this and are not sure how to deal with it or how to address it. What did you try, and where did you get any results in addressing these challenges? Because I'm saying that to say that I work in this provision. I work with professionals who are looking for answers, and they're saying that we don't know where the answers are. We've been doing this for years, and the young people just don't seem to listen to us. They're just doing, they're doing their own thing, and it seems to be getting worse. Murders are increasing, drug dealers are, suicide is on the increase. There's more of them going to prison, and we don't know what to do. And I feel I've got a solution, a way of addressing it. I've spoken and mentioned it, and I think you've actually implemented some of this to some degree and got results yourself. So please, if we just go all the way back to what the county lines are, what you experienced with your 18-year-old son, for how long, where you're at now with all of it, and then we just open it up and see where we go from there.
Fantastic. No, I mean, it's so interesting because I think when we first came back from Ghana, I really felt like at least, even though it was like, oh, we weren't going to come back, but okay, now we're here. I actually thought, okay, we've had 5 years, solid, good years back there. That's a good foundation. So it doesn't matter that he's going into state school, all of this stuff, everything will be all right. Because I think, because you have to live in this world, I gave myself a story that was kind of like, I've always given him books by Black authors. He's been around Black history. He's met all these impressive Black people. That's all you need to do. I think I really, really, well, I know that's what I thought. And I hadn't really considered everything else that was around us and had also happened. So the fact that my son's father died when he was 8 and we moved away, I mean, it's so mad. We were traveling on the Sunday to move to Ghana and he died on the Friday.
Wow.
So we were already going. So although we ended up staying for 3 months, everything was already in Ghana. I'd let my flat out here, everything was go. But psychologically, that was a massive wrench to lose your father and then be in another country.
Sure.
So, okay, if we'd stayed, I think it would have been one thing. But then, then we come back. So another wrench again. And then we come back and we're in a household where my mum is sick and I'm also not really fully present because I'm thinking, oh my God, how did I end up back in this place that I don't want to be? So you've got that happening at home. And then later on, as I've learned, this school was an academy school. And we chose it because it's UCL Academy. So we're like, oh my God, he's going to be going to the university, fast track, all of this stuff. What I since learned from somebody who went there to do a workshop, she said not only the layout, but the style of the people at the top of the school is exactly the same as a youth offenders institute, especially the new ones that are coming online. And interestingly, the new private ones that are coming online. So, it's like it was set up for a situation that really, really, really wasn't cool. Now, I'm gonna, there are people downstairs, so I'm gonna just put this on the Zoom on my phone and I'm gonna take this outside. With all that said, I think the timing, the place, everything was kind of set up for maybe not the most positive things being able to happen. And so my son started, he started in the second year. So I don't know what now it's called year 10 or something, or year 9, I don't know.
Yeah.
So he didn't, So he didn't start with them from primary school, and he'd come in from abroad. When he came in, he was such a good student, such a good student. He won the school speech prize in his first 2 weeks. They moved him up a year in English because he was such an avid reader and writer. And he went in with the West African kind of private school mindset. I'm going to do brilliantly, so all the teachers and everybody will like me, because that's how it works. So if you're really clever, you're really popular. Unfortunately, it's so the opposite way. And he was bullied. He ended up joining the bullies, and there was already children in the school, who I found out later from the police, who were known to have been actively recruiting other young people into this, of encouraging them to find out who wants to buy any drugs, who in their areas looks like they would need drugs. All of this stuff was apparently already going on in school, and he ended up being with these people. Now, for a long time, although he wasn't getting on at school, I didn't think there was anything wrong, because he wasn't staying out late, or he would always be home within an hour. What I later learned was actually they had a very active drug selling, storing drugs, looking after weapons in the school. Wow. That was all going on. Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. And the police said that they think that school had the most amount of young people involved in the selling of drugs than anywhere in Camden, any school in Camden. At one stage, they knew that there were 20 children in that 1 year group. Last year, the police told me that there were still 11 people who had been in that year group who were still known to be actively involved. One of the young men, who I did know his parents, they ended up moving away. It didn't work. He's been in prison, don't know if he's out yet. Another boy, I found out from his mum that he's gone missing again. So, but what the county lines, you've explained a bit, is that they, older people invariably will get some younger people, they give them some drugs, either it's mostly crack or heroin, or crack and heroin, and they have a phone line, and they'll go to somewhere outside of London, a small satellite town, and they'll recruit a local addict, and like a minor dealer. They'll set up home in the house of an addict, very often a house of an addict, or somebody who's got some social challenges, so they'll get a bit of money by allowing their flat to be used. And then for a period of days, drug addicts in the area, drug users, will be sent a number and told drugs have come from London, come buy them. And there'll be 2 or 3 young people there, and they will be selling the drugs until it's all done, and then they'll bring the money back to somebody else who will meet them, collect the money. Sometimes the money will even be collected in the town, and that's the county lines. They're crossing county lines, and they're using these phone lines. So this is what my son ended up being involved with. For a long time, he actually never disappeared. He was in London, but then later he started, after I took him out of school and tried doing homeschooling with him. By that stage, what I realise now, and we've talked about it, was too late. He was in. So then we got the not coming home and all of this sort of stuff, or coming in really late and all of this stuff. But for me, where the medicine really works, psychedelics, I was saying to you before, was it helped to take away the shame. Because, and from speaking to other parents, what I find is what keeps parents immobilized is the shame, the in the shame is the hurt and all of this stuff, and you know, the picture that you saw for your child so not coming true, all of that there. But I think what keeps you from being able to really do anything is the shame. Because even when you do tell people that you feel like you can tell, they say things like, oh my God, that's really awful, he was such a lovely child. But, you know, so many of these other parents, not you, and then they'll just talk for ages about how this only happens to really, really awful parents, but you are the exception. And it's really, really, you know, in the beginning, it's so awful that you just don't tell anybody. You keep it to yourself. But for me, what the Cambo did, and then definitely with the Iboga, even from just microdosing the Iboga, was giving me the backbone and the lack of fear and the lack of shame to just grab as many people as is possible to try and help me, because I just didn't really know what to do. And constantly the surprise was really realizing how little help there really, really is. I had thought that, right, okay, he's under 16. There must be somewhere with my consent he can be taken to. I'll go with him. There's no such thing. I was told by the police, I can take him abroad against his will, but there can be no help and we cannot manhandle him. So that's like, well, that's really interesting how that's going to happen. You know, all sorts of I got social services and I was on their case every day, but you know, what do they really do? Somebody comes round once a week and talks to him for an hour. You know, every single uncle and friends of friends. I actually counted one time that we had 18 black men, friends, family, and people who didn't even know us at some point put effort into my son. You know, the thing is so ingrained when they're in, the control of them is so ingrained when they're in, that I realized that the surface story that society gives, oh, there's no mentors around, there's no this, there's no that. I took him to the house of a multi-millionaire who took him in the room, talked to him, said to him, I've got money, I will put money into you. And you know, Seren believed it. He knew that this guy would do it. We had somebody else who took him off and got him working on a building site with him, another multi-millionaire, to kind of show him, look, hard. All these things happened for him and they still didn't make any difference. And it only made a difference. Well, he only started to change when I stopped fighting him, which was also what the medicine had been telling me from the beginning, but I couldn't understand that when the medicine was saying to me, leave him alone, leave him alone. I was thinking, what do you mean leave him alone? What I got to understand was to stop being so combative. And that's what I started to do. So when I spoke on the stage with you, we weren't at the end of the story at all. We were still going through it. But then it was post then that I stopped being so combative and I started to treat it the way he wanted me to treat it, which is like, he's gone to work. And it would be so bizarre. Going, how was your day? Oh yeah, it was all right. Having really like normal conversations.
That's interesting. It makes a lot of sense, though. It really does. That
Yeah,
you would make progress that way, yeah.
totally. Because actually I read two books. I found two books by people who'd been in religious cults. And that's where I learned the approach, because I'd learned so many other approaches and they all helped a bit. But it was the religious cults who were kind of like, how people are kept is by setting up an opposition. And the only way you can get through is to no longer be in opposition to with them, but you've got to be on their side. So
are you telling me you saw it like he was in a cult? Was that in some of your perspective, like you felt that it was that deeply rooted? Wow, okay.
Totally. It was the only, after reading so much about different situations, the cult one was the one where it was exactly the same, because literally these people could call him and he could be holding a hot dish and he could drop it and go. Like I spoke to a woman whose son actually threatened to jump out of the second floor window if she didn't open the door. And she moved him and opened the door, and you know, he left. So that's what I did. I started talking to him and he was away. And, you know, how's your day? I hope you're being careful, la, 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 la. And then I started sending him research that was happening into psilocybin and research into MDMA therapy. And I started sending him the research, sending him the data, sending it, and then talking to him. So what do you think? La, 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 la. Having these really bizarre, deep conversations and hearing, you know, upset addicts sometimes in the background, shouting adults in the background, really distressing, hearing really, really distressing stuff, but having to act normal because I needed him to read research. And then when he'd read enough so we could start having normal conversations about it, I one day just said to him, will you try this? Because if you try this and what you're doing is what you really want to do, you're going to be so much better at it. And it took about 3 days, but he went away and came back and was like, yeah, because I know what I'm doing is what I want to do. It's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And yeah, I'll do it. And
Okay.
so he came, we traveled to an appropriate place. And yeah, we worked with MDMA and we worked with psilocybin. And within 48 hours, he was done with the life.